Now, how about them damn Celtics?
And we are back with another episode of How About Them Celtics. Sam and I are here recording on Saturday, April 26th, but Sam's not here.
You said
I
Sam.
have Bobby.
Okay.
I know I said Sam. I'm replacing with Bobby. We're in the same house, so we're going to have to mute when the other one is talking so we don't get picked up. But how you doing, Bobby? Thanks for joining.
I'm doing fantastic. Got a nice lunch just now. And now we're back at the crib, ready to pod.
All right. Let's start with the obvious. So Sam and I talked about it last night because we did the game recap, but Celtics Magic now at 2-1. All the talk is on physicality. All the talk is on the Magic basically beating up the Celtics from time to time and slowly injuring their starting lineup. Joe Mazzulla talked today, and basically whenever was asked about the physicality, it was like, okay, yeah, but they also got all their points off turnovers, off this, off that, and pointed to a bunch of other things on the margins that were the difference in the series actually before the physicality. But my point in thought process is none of those things would have happened without the physicality. So I feel like it's kind of like a two-pronged thing. What'd you make of it? What'd you make of Game 3? What went wrong? And how much do you think the physicality and what is now the prevailing storyline, how much do you think that actually played a part in the reasons that they lost?
Yeah, everything stems from that. It's very clear since the start of the series, that's the Magic's game plan. It's not to go out and intentionally injure players, but we want to be incredibly physical to try and bridge the talent gap as much as possible, to try and prop up our offense, to try and take from their focus, induce mental mistakes. And when I asked Jaylen Brown how much of those 21 turnovers that led to 26 points for Orlando, who could still only muster 95 points even with that boost, how much of that was self-inflicted compared to dictated by them and their physicality, he wanted to give all the credit. And granted, that's in a public setting. Maybe privately he says something different, but he also noted his complaints within that answer about the officiating and still wanted to put all the credit to Orlando rather than, hey, some of this was self-inflicted or unrelated. No, it all stemmed from his vantage point to that physicality that the Magic brought to the table and have this entire series. And credit to them, it finally resulted in a win. And so now all of a sudden it's 2-1, and the Celtics once again are even more banged up than they were going into a game.
Yeah, I guess then my follow-up would be, I agree with what you said. Like, this has been their plan the whole series. We've seen it from the way they've played in all the games and physicality. If that's been the plan, I think the next logical question is what changed between games 1 and 2 and game 3 when it actually resulted in a win and the Celtics actually failed to crack 100 points. And I do think there were some small adjustments. I think they guarded the pick and roll differently. I think the third quarter was a lot more intentional at stopping the pick and roll from developing. I think they pressed up. I think they stopped the rolls. I think they played a lot more straight up. They switched a lot, which Franz talked after the game about. I think they pressed a lot more. I also think they got a lot more liberal with pushing the limits of what is allowed and what will be called a foul and what can be called a foul when you're fouling every possession. I talked about it on the show last night. Like, Wendell Carter Jr. got 6 offensive rebounds, and Joe talked about how those offensive rebounds were part of the problem. He got those because he was body checking people into paint and it wasn't getting called, right? Like, the Celtics turned the ball over a bunch of times, and how much of that was the Celtics' own mental mistakes versus other guys on the Magic pushing them around and pushing them off their spots, off the ball. And so I think that's the question of what do you think changed between the first 2 games and this game when it actually paid off for Orlando?
I think it's a whole host of things. You touched on some of them, but more physicality from a team that was already playing incredibly physical to begin with. And what that results in is some of those turnovers for sure. It was the physicality impacting the Celtics mentally or just not being able to hold up to it on a particular possession. The Celtics did a horrendous job of meeting that physicality or getting anywhere close to matching it, let alone just withstanding it and playing through it. So I do think that it took from them for sure, and it was evident. And what it translated to was these changes on the margins. And with the officiating last night, as the Magic finally get some home cooking, the Celtics had 10 more points at the free throw line in game 2. Then they had 1 fewer than the Magic in game 3. It's a meaningful flip, especially when compounded by the fact that you're not doing your job on the glass, where it doesn't matter how good your first shot defense is if you can't stop them from scoring right after it. So all of a sudden Orlando gets 15 offensive rebounds, 16 second chance points. Massive problem and a significant win on the margins that was helping propel the Celtics in games 1 and 2. And we talked about the turnovers already. Not having Drew Holiday plays a role in that unquestionably. I thought that Tatum was bringing the ball up more than he should have. Jaylen Brown, on the one that the Magic ultimately lost their final challenge in the first half, that was nearly a turnover and an example of why I didn't love the idea. Even with that being off a rebound, I thought someone should have come and got the ball from Jaylen Brown. They should have had Derek White bringing it up more. The pace wasn't good enough, and that plays a compromising role because the game is connected. So your issues at the offensive end, and sometimes they stem from playing at too slow of a tempo, even by Celtics standards, ultimately can put you in a poor position defensively. And so it just wasn't really conducive to having the type of flow that the Celtics wanted.
Yeah, the Magic just did a good job of taking them out of their own rhythm. But what's the solution then? Like, is it because like you saw them find the success later in the game where they finally got the couple stops and they played a little faster? But if the Magic's whole game plan is to stop them from playing faster, like, is the answer just to ignore it and play faster? Like, it's hard to do that when they're playing so physical. So, like, what changes, I guess, are you looking for in game 4? I think, like, Derek White talked about today, getting into the actions quicker, just trying to get stuff happening earlier in the shot clock. I do think Drew Holiday being out in game 3 played a huge part in the Celtic struggles. I think he was an underrated part of their game 2 win with Jason Tatum out. He only had 6 assists, but it did lead the team, and he was like a big way they generated offense in this game. In that game was going to him, and not having him not only affected their ability to run a flowing offense effectively, but it also meant that no matter who was on the floor, the Magic would also always have a guy that they could pick on, especially when Jaylen Brown got into foul trouble. And so you take Drew Holiday out of the equation. That's just another guy that the Magic don't have to worry about on defense. But how do you see the Celtics making those adjustments, like possession to possession? Is it like, do you subscribe to the theory, I guess, of it is worth matching the physicality? I mean, you hear Jaylen talk about fighting after the game. Like, do you think that is a worthwhile thing, or is it just like doubling down on what they already do well and trying to ignore the potential fouls, I guess?
Yeah, first off, this is a powder keg. The Celtics have reached their boiling point. Jaylen Brown made that explicitly clear, and so this is waiting for a hard foul where the situation kind of explodes, and no one actually wants to fight, but there might be a large meeting of the minds, if you will, after another foul that the Celtics take exception to, especially if it's a hard fall for one of their guys. Pace, as Derek White talked about, you have to get it to a more favorable tempo. That's massive. You have to get the second unit going. And even if it's just Peyton Pritchard, who in game 1 had a playoff career high with 19 points, even if it's just him, and he certainly plays a role in that tempo factor, you've got to get more contributions from your bench. Joe Mazzulla got asked about the Celtics bench, and the first thing he said while the question was still getting phrased was, yeah, I believe that everyone from Orlando's second unit was a positive in the plus-minus rating tonight. So it just can't play out that way, even if you are the favorites from a talent perspective. That's one. And then also, I give the Magic a ton of credit because they willfully gave up, and it was by design, but they willfully gave up switches in game 2, and the Celtics picked them apart for it. And the way that it got Kristaps Porzingis going is that he was able to get these switches onto guards, and now he's getting to the free throw line where he had 10 of his 20 points in game 2. But Orlando, as much as they were willing to switch, they were much more forceful about resisting them when they didn't want to. It had a huge impact on Porzingis in game 3. I think it really impacted things on a possession-by-possession basis quite a bit. So for the Celtics and that physicality, it's really about finding the areas where it matters most and it makes the most sense. So what I look at, Jack, is that the screens have to be so much better. So many times you can point to a possession gone wrong and say there was an issue related to that initial on-ball screen in particular, or a pin down off it at the start of an action where things just went haywire because it wasn't effective enough. So the Celtics need way better screens than they were the other night, because on a possession-by-possession basis, too often they weren't getting to what they wanted to, or things were getting disrupted as a result of that.
Yeah, I feel like part of that goes back to the next thing of Kristaps has been bad, and he's not a good screen setter. He's never been a good screen setter, and if you need screens to work, it's not going to be him to get that done. I think Luke needs to be better at those, and I think he's been getting pushed around a bit more than the Celtics probably want him to this series. I think I don't know what the next step is, because I think you make a good point about the screening. Like maybe it is, let's have Jalen and Jason try to set some screens. Let's have Derek or Peyton or Drew, if he's healthy, set some of these screens and try to go from there. But the Magic are so physical that when KP goes to set these screens, he's quite literally just getting pushed off his spot. Even at the smallest marginal contact that wouldn't be a foul in the regular season. Like he's just not a good screen setter like that. And I don't know what the solution is for KP to have an effective series. I said this after game one. I think this just might not be a series where KP is able to be his full effective self. That's fine. The Celtics should have to find other ways to make him useful, or just maybe go elsewhere in the series. But regardless, before we continue, I do need to tell the good people at home about PrizePicks, which is the best place to win real money sports action this basketball and baseball season. Sam and I on our pregame shows use the PrizePicks every single time. We're historically not very good at them, but it is a good time. You just pick more or less on at least two players for shop to win up to 2,000x your cash. You can cash in on the basketball playoffs with PrizePicks. Points, rebounds, assists, doesn't matter. Just pick more or less. Baseball season is also going on, so if you want to combine, you can. If you want to pick players for RBIs in baseball and points in basketball and goals in hockey, you can put multiple players from multiple different sports in the same lineup and have your chance to win there. It's truly the best place to win real money sports action. The sports season, any sport you're looking at, even esports. Download the app today and use code CLNS to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code CLNS to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks, run your game. But back to Kristaps, because I think that is the point that has been really the, I don't want to say biggest issue, because I think the turnovers are a bigger issue and the offensive rebounds and the physicality in general, but he has not had a good scoring series. He has not had a good offensive series. And through the first two games, you could at least point to his defense and be like, okay, that's effective. But then you saw in game three, with late game execution being a necessity, Franz Wagner literally just like picked him out of the lineup and said, you get in this action, you're getting cooked. And he just beat him off the dribble every time. And so are you at the point where it is play Pritchard or play someone over him, or if Drew's healthy, play Al over him and run the starters with Al instead of KP? Or do you think there are other ways for him to be effective? Because my solution after the first couple games, where I think that the Magic did a good job of making him uncomfortable in the post, was just run the pick and pop. But now that Orlando is making a concerted effort to take away all 3-point attempts, they're not even letting him get to those looks. So it really just feels like he is not a viable offensive option in the series right now.
Yeah, it's an interesting balance of the present and the long term for a team that's hoping to repeat as champions, where you have to get him going against what Orlando is throwing at Porzingis. Jamal Mosley noted it pregame, and it's something that in the regular season we just didn't see a ton of, and that is we have to get all the way out. Even with his size and his extended range, we have to try to disrupt his shot. And they've done a great job of that. So it is concerning that he comes out and says, after not making a three throughout the first 3 games, he's 0 for 10 from beyond the arc. And Porzingis says, my shot's feeling a little junky right now. I'm not going to lie. That has to get fixed. There's also the concern, like you said, that he's not much of a screen setter. He doesn't like physicality to begin with. I think he's trying to embrace it more, but it's just not who he is naturally. And if he's someone who he can punish a switch on a post up, but if you don't allow that to happen, then he's not particularly good in those situations. It's a massive game changer, especially as you look at the teams they might have to go through to get to a championship. Cleveland with 2 bigs, the Thunder with double bigs who are so effective with Hardenstein and Holmgren. So if all of a sudden it becomes, if we don't give him what he wants out of this, he's actually not that big of a concern on these post-ups that have been among the best in the league the last 2 years. That changes how valuable Kristaps Porzingis becomes. And if his shot has gone missing, however long that lasts, it's a massive concern. So more than anything, Jack, I want him to fight through this and come out of it as early as possible, ideally within the first round. But I am more open to the idea of not as long of a leash as if he was giving you more certainly than in game 3.
Yeah, it's just tough because especially against a team like the Magic, where Jalen and Jason are already having to fight through a lot of physicality just to get their buckets. I mean, even those threes that Jason was taking last night, he got fouled on 2 of them and probably was, close to landing space on a bunch of others. But the Magic just get in their grills so much on everything. And Jalen had a stretch in the second half yesterday where he looked like he was just like, all right, F this, I'm going to get to the hoop through no matter who you put in the lane. And so if they're seeing that much physicality, that's like why you got Kristaps. That's why you traded for him. So you can have that release valve. So you can have that extra option to go to. And if that's not there, then you're into the realm of, all right, then why is he on the floor? Let's just get Horford on so it's a better screener and another floor spacer in a different way. Let's just get Peyton on the floor so we have an extra shooter. And honestly, Peyton, I think, has been underrated this series a little bit. His defense has been great. And he had a few rough moments in game 3, but I think he's been a pretty viable 6th starter, to have, especially with KP struggles. It's hard when the bench gets nullified as much as it did in game 3. Pritchard took no threes. That is what I pointed to last night immediately of that is like indicative of how well the Magic have been defending the 3 ball, or how well they intentionally defended the 3 ball in game 3. I'm very much intrigued to see what happens in game 4 from a response perspective, because everyone has been obviously very up in arms about, the Cole Anthony foul on Jalen, the KCP foul that injured Jason Tatum, the KP elbow to the head. But if you it's almost like if you tap into that physicality and you dive headfirst into the, okay, let's match it, let's fight them, if that's the phrasing you'd like to use, like Jalen did, you get away from the style of basketball that the Celtics have played all season. Like the Celtics have built a brand of, we're not going to foul, we're not even going to go for turnovers, really. Like they average like the second least steals a game in the NBA this year, and they were up towards the top in blocks because they had a lot of help defense at times once you got into paint with KP and Luke. But by and large, their game plan was, we're not going to jump, we're not going to overextend, we are just going to play straight up defense and not value, and we're going to live with that result. And it works out for the math game for them. But if they're doing that while the other team is simultaneously, we're going to elbow you in the ribs on a 3-point shot, we're going to face guard, push you to the floor for an offensive rebound, because shit, if we're getting away with it, we might as well do it. Like you almost have to cave and dive into that and do it a little bit if you're the Celtics. But then if you get called for the fouls, then you are double screwed. So listen, this is not me saying like I think the Magic have a real shot to win the series. Could they win game 4? Could they make things interesting? Absolutely, right? That's the nature of the NBA. These guys are in the NBA for a reason. I say it all the time. They're great players. They're talented players. But you saw clear challenges of having to score against a defense that is willing to push the boundaries of what is going to be called in game 3. And I don't know what it's going to look like in game 4. I don't know what the answers are. I think Derek White needs to find a way to get going again a little bit more. I think you need to find a way to generate more threes against a team that is so good at not giving them up. Or you need to tap into that. You need to, get a 3 open and then drive off the closeout. You need to find ways to use their own defense against them. And listen, I think the physicality is going to be the discussion point. I just talked about it and ranted for like 3 straight minutes about what the Celtics could do. But I do think there's a point to what Jim Mazzulla said where you have to ignore it and you have to focus on, all right, if their physicality is going to force us to turn the ball over, we have to focus double as hard to not turn the ball over and embrace the physicality and just get a shot up every possession. Like even if we shoot 30% from the field, if we have 2 turnovers, that'll be beneficial to us because the Magic's half-court offense is just as bad. So if we don't turn the ball over, they can't get those points. We need to focus on, let's not let them get a million offensive rebounds, even if that means, taking away some of their leak outs and sending an extra guard to the paint to get it. That's fine. If you need to focus not on giving up free throws, even if that means giving up some extra mid-ranges, do that. Like you need to concede other things to win those margins. With that, I think is an awkward conversation. But at the end of the day, if the Magic are going to play like this, that's almost what you have to do.
And here's the thing. Banchero and Wagner like those mid-range jumpers. That's where they're the most natural and what they enjoy getting to. And so if you're minimizing the free throws and they don't have the supporting cast that is shooting, we talked about it before game 3, Jack, that, hey, maybe they come back and there's some home cooking and these guys that they're kicking it out to, they find their rhythm. They didn't. They shot the ball horrendously. They went 8 of 25 from 3. That's 25%. That's god awful. They shot 41% from the field. So maybe like that variance can swing any night, but it certainly didn't in game 3. And the sample size of an entire season plus 3 playoff games, it still hasn't swung. So that's not a prediction, but it's an awfully large body of work to be able to operate off of if you're the Celtics. I want to make a quick side point to go back to someone you talked about at the beginning of that, Peyton Pritchard, because what's easy to get lost in the shuffle is that he was among the best Celtics in terms of his screening the other night. He was the one who was not only getting switches, and like maybe some of these were fouls that he got away with, but it's the NBA. There's just, it's different in terms of the officiating. And even though Tatum got a palming call yesterday that I thought was ridiculous, traveling, all that stuff, 3 seconds isn't 3 seconds. We know what the deal is. And so even if some of those screens were illegal, he was legitimately moving people off of their spot, not just forcing switches. So he was among the best screeners for the Celtics yesterday, Peyton Pritchard. Next to an answer that it's not so black and white as easy as it is to compartmentalize things when it does fall under that application. But at the same time, for the Celtics, as Joe Mazzulla talked about, you can't get blinded by what Orlando is trying to do. And now it's, we want to hit them back, and you're losing sight of what your priorities are and what you want to accomplish and how you want to go about that. That has to be your North Star. You cannot stray from that just to match the physicality. At the same time, the Celtics have clearly shifted into protection mode, where it's 3 games, it's 3 injuries, it's 3 flagrant fouls, it's a Wendell Carter Jr. chokehold at the end of the game. I mean, the Celtics have reached their boiling point, to use that phrase again, with how the Magic are operating. And so the idea of now we need to protect ourselves, because it's not just, hey, we're getting punked. It's we're actually getting injured by this team and some of these shenanigans. I think that the Celtics, at the same time, you can't lose focus. You have to be able to maintain that, as challenging as it is. But there are going to be moments where you have to respond. Like Al Horford years ago, when he goes up for the dunk and elbows Giannis in the face to give him a taste of his own medicine, the entire team, I'd say the entire fan base, fed off of that moment. And so there are ways to go about this where you don't have to lose sight of your priorities while being able to also defend yourself and respond and send a message.
Yeah, and I think people are going to lose the fact that, like, everyone, it's so easy to sit here and say, like, oh my God, like play basketball, man. It's like, ignore it. Who cares? These are humans. Like, these are human beings, and they're getting injured on the court. Like, of course you're going to be mad, and of course that's going to affect the way they play and their ability to stick to a game plan. So it is objectively a hard thing, and just another layer to consider there. But before we move on to NBA stuff, I need to tell you guys about Gametime. It's the best place for all your ticketing needs this basketball, baseball, and whatever season you're looking for. Let me pull up Gametime so I can show you exactly what I'm talking about here. Let's take a look at this Mary J. Blige concert that was rescheduled to the day after the game, and we had to deal with last night. At the Kia Center, you can look here. You can see the amazing deals according to Gametime. You can see super deals. You can see the fire emblem somewhere around here that tells you the cheapest deal in the stadium. The best part about Gametime is that when your Wi-Fi is good enough to load the images, unlike mine right now, it shows you the exact seat the view you're gonna see from your seat for the ticket that you purchase, as you can see right here from the Kia Center for this Orlando Magic game I picked up. You know exactly the view you're getting from the seat that you're purchasing. You can toggle on and off a slider so you can see hidden fees, so you don't get surprised with anything at checkout. So you know exactly what you are paying for at the time you're making the purchase, and there will be no surprises there. Last minute deals are another great feature of Gametime, which means you can save real money booking last minute with Gametime. Save up to 60% buying last minute for sports, concerts, comedy, theater, etc. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code CLNS for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code CLNS for $20 off. Download the Gametime app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. All right, Bobby, let's talk about the rest of the NBA for a little bit before we get on out of here. A lot of series to unpack, a lot of stuff going on around the association as the Celtics have been engaged in this war with the Magic. Is there a series in particular you want to start with?
No, I'm willing to talk about any. There's none that jump out as like, we have to begin with this one.
Okay, let's do Clippers and Nuggets. That has been my favorite series so far. Game 4 is going to be last night by the time that people are hearing this, but we've had 3 games. It's at 6 p.m., so it's actually in a couple hours here as we're recording this. What an incredible series. I think this has been the best pure basketball series in the playoffs. James Harden's been incredible. Kawhi's been unbelievable. The Nuggets are pretty beat up, but they've been trying to hang in as much as possible, even though they did get a little bit stomped in game 3. But the first 2 games of the series were awesome. Do you think there's a pathway for the Nuggets to win the series, or do you think the Clippers are just going to keep chugging along?
I mean, when you have Nikola Jokic, there's a pathway. But the problem for Denver is the last 2 years, the rotation has not stepped up, especially the second unit. So they've been so thin. They wore down in the playoffs last year and had a Game 7 collapse on their home floor. And then you look at this go around and it doesn't look like they're surviving the war of attrition where Michael Porter Jr. is injured. Jamal Murray is banged up. Aaron Gordon told Mark Spears that he can barely jump right now. So they just have bodies breaking down left and right. And, it happens to be some of their most important players outside of Jokic. So it's not that Denver has no pathway to winning and their odds are literally 0%, but the Clippers look like the second best team in the West right now. And if anyone is going to upset the Thunder, that's as good a bet as any you're going to find in the West. And so when you look at Kawhi, who just how well he's moving out on the floor, how light on his feet he looks all of a sudden, what they're getting overall from James Harden. And this series could have been a sweep if not for not a collapse, but just a calamity of errors at the end of game 1 on the part of the Clippers. They let a game go that they were in control of. So they have been much, much better than Denver. And I don't think that they let this series ultimately go the other way.
Yeah, I just think the Clippers are the better basketball team right now. They're very underrated, and I think could make some noise. But as we're recording this, the Cavaliers just dominantly went up 3-0 against the Heat. We don't have to go super in depth with that every series. The Heat just aren't very good, and the Cavs are really good. I don't know if you have any other analysis past that, but I think that's about it.
Miami booed on their home floor today, which, what were the expectations, and who are you Heat fans to be booing? It'd be more warranted for the Heat to boo their fan base than for the fans to boo them this year based on what's happening. And Cleveland, it's a really nice jumping off point for the playoffs for them because it's not a lot of people who've proven themselves outside of Donovan Mitchell. Some of them have, for all intent and purposes, no playoff experience, like a Ty Jerome. So for Cleveland to be able to go into this and see how a coach like Eric Spoelstra is going to challenge them in a best-of-7 setting and have kind of a very light first-round opponent, I think is ultimately beneficial. And for Cleveland, I think it's an ideal starting point to the playoffs.
Yeah, agreed. That's pack them up. It's done. Bucks win game 3. Pacers were up 2-0. 37-point performance from Gary Trent brings it back from Milwaukee. I still think I lean Pacers in this series. I still think they'll find a way to get it done. This screams like the Bucks just got a little bit of juice on their home floor. I think the Pacers are the better team right now, but who knows? Giannis is Giannis, and maybe something else can happen, but we'll see.
I could not be less moved by victory via Gary Trent Jr. Just, we talk about shooting variance, and that's swinging in his favor so dramatically that it propels Milwaukee. They just have so many issues that if you're watching this show, you understand what they are. And I'm with you. I think the Pacers are the better team. I think it's a horrible matchup for the Bucks. And I still feel like Indiana, yes, they're not balanced, but their unorthodox approach and just what a nightmare they are to try and keep up with offensively. Again, if you're watching this show, you know this. That was the most difficult series for the Celtics last year, and there's a reason for it. And for Tyrese Halliburton, there were points in the regular season where, man, he's not looking good right now, but he has really come out of that for a while now and played at a potential all-NBA caliber level. And so for Indiana, just how good they look. And again, it's a horrible draw for the second year in a row for Milwaukee. And that's not disregarding the health issues on the part of the Bucks in each of these last 2 seasons. But The Pacers, I think, are the difference this year is that I don't think it's just a bad matchup. I think they're the better team now. And so I'm with you. I think that Indiana wins the series.
Yeah, I think a lot higher on the Pacers than general consensus as well. But I think they're really good. I think they play a very NBA zigging, they're zagging style of basketball, and it works a lot for them in certain spots. So I don't see the way the Bucks continue this up. But who knows? Like I said, Giannis is Giannis, and I suppose Gary Trent can do stuff too if needed. The Thunder and Grizzlies are playing right now. Dead. Is there anything else that needs to be said? I think just dead. Grizzlies are dead. They're up to 27-25 as I'm talking, but cooked. They're cooked.
It was so sad to watch just their body language after Ja left as the lead is slowly just deteriorating. You could see it on the head coach's face. You can see it on the players. They lost their confidence. They didn't act like a team that believed they were going to survive and hold on to win that game. And then they had some errors like Zach Edey on the jump ball. You're like 10 feet tall. Why do you need to foul Lou Dort on the tip and in such a blatant way on top of that? And so, yeah, that series, pack them up. That is a sweep. I give Memphis as low a chance as possible without putting it as 0 because there's just no way they're going to win this game.
Yeah, no, they're cooked. It's Jover. Let's do Pistons Knicks. Knicks won game 3 despite trying desperately to throw it away at the very, very end. I wouldn't be surprised if this one goes 7. I think the last 3 ones we've talked about could all go 7. Pistons, Knicks, Lakers, Wolves, and Rockets, Warriors all have the chance to go 7 games. I think they're probably the 3 best, most interesting series right now. I think Clippers Nuggets has some of the most interesting basketball purely on the court, but I think in terms of storylines and potential to go 7, those 3 are top of the top. So feel free to jump around. We don't have to spend a million years on all of them, but I think if I had to lay it out, I think Knicks probably win this series based on experience alone, but the Pistons are going to take it far. I leaned the same about the Warriors, but the Jimmy injury could drastically change things, which could give the Rockets an opening. And then Lakers Wolves is weird because I think Jaden McDaniels has been playing phenomenal basketball and Naz Reid has as well. And so if those two keep up their high level of play, it could be hard for the Lakers to win. However, if there's any regression from those two and they fall back to the means a little bit, I do think you could see some Luka and LeBron magic. I got to make sure Terp's out of earshot for that, but we'll see what happens.
Yeah. So, well, I'm loving all these, but the Pistons Knicks series has been so entertaining. And going into it, I thought most likely outcome, Detroit takes a bite out of New York, but doesn't ultimately advance. And then they were the better team for majority of the first 2 games. And they just had a complete fourth quarter meltdown in the series opener. And if not for that, could have been coming home with a 2-0 lead. Game 3 really feels like a turning point in the series, and you don't want to overreact to one game, but at the same time, the way that the Knicks were able to win that game, it was competitive, it was back and forth, all that. It's not like they just came out and introduced something that Detroit had and will continue to have no answer for, but it does, again, feel like a turning point to me where the Knicks are the more talented team with far more reliable sources of offense, and as much as I love Cade Cunningham and this Detroit team, it feels to me like this ultimately the scales are starting to tip. And so I think the Knicks win this. I actually do think that it goes 7, and Detroit winning that game at Madison Square Garden, where you might have to be concerned about the officiating because the league might say we've gotten all that we need from the Pistons and it's time for that New York market to advance. I mean, that feels like uphill sledding to me. Even if the officiating is truly 50-50, it's still game 7 at Madison Square Garden against a team that is more talented than you, certainly at the offensive end. So I think that it was huge for the Knicks to be able to get that game 3 win. And I think it has tilted the series.
Definitely. And then I'll just have you make your prediction in give me 3 sentences on each of the other series. Give me Rockets, Warriors, sum up, and Lakers, Wolves, sum up. And then we can do the rat list and get on out of here because we got a hoop.
Jaden McDaniels and Naz Reid, you nailed it there. I'm not going to do the 3-sentence thing, but I mean, the way the Lakers are, and they didn't do this in the Game 2 win, but overall, their defense since the Luka trade and not taking on Mark Williams, which I wonder if they regret, it's been what it is. And so they're giving up so many clean looks from beyond the arc. And yeah, Jaden McDaniels can be inconsistent, but when he's playing at this level, the Timberwolves look the part of a title contender. And Naz Reid still feels underrated to me, certainly by casual fans. And he's plenty capable, especially when you're giving him clean looks, of absolutely cooking you like he's done at times in this series. So McDaniels goes for 30 the other night. Reed, it seems like they have no answer for. I don't think that they have turned Rudy Gobert into quite the embarrassment that it had the potential to be for him. This just seemed like I have this Luka nightmare once again. Are you kidding me? And it really overall has not been the case. So the Lakers, I think the lack of balance and how they've chosen to navigate that, especially on the defensive end, that ultimately to me is why you never count out LeBron and Luka, but as good as they've looked in the regular season, it feels like the Timberwolves are the better team and they're actually going to win that series.
Yeah. Okay. I agree. And then Rockets Warriors is the last one, right? Did I miss anything else? I think that's it.
No, that's it. And I have no, you know what? That's a lie. I'd like to see the Warriors. I'd like to see the Warriors advance, but if you're the Rockets, I'm still bothered for them that they held them to 95 points in game 1 in Houston and they lost by double digits. It just can't happen. You need more from Fred VanVleet. I love Amen Thompson, and I think this has been a pretty nice series for him overall. The Jimmy injury, that certainly could be a game changer here because these two teams, it's a nice battle between your strengths and your weaknesses line up. And so especially like strength on strength with the Rockets defense and Golden State's offense, it makes for a really compelling best of 7 to start the playoffs. I just don't think that Houston has the experience or offensive firepower to be able to advance. So I'm still going with Golden State, but Jimmy Butler's injury, like you said, it might ultimately be something that the Warriors, let's not forget, this is a team that was kind of floundering before that trade and still was the 7 seed ultimately. So like that absence might be something they just don't overcome.
Yeah, I think I lean Warriors too. It's just the Jimmy means a lot. So we'll see. But all right, rat list, Bobby. We'll get on out of here for hoops briefly. My initial rat list is just the Heat. I'm dying, but what's your rat list? What you got?
Oh, you mean the Heat in Orlando, not the Miami Heat?
The Heat in Orlando, not the Miami Heat. The fact that I'm sweating my ass off indoors at 4 p.m., that is my rat list.
Okay, this time, unlike earlier when we were hoping that Terp wasn't listening, I hope he can hear me now. Rat list is they had shut off the elevator to go to the media lounge last night. And so it felt like climbing Everest, where we were just scaling our way all around the stadium to get back to the media lounge. So props to us. Great workout. But rat list is shutting off the elevator.
Yeah, that sucks. Shutting off the elevator sucks. What else? Rat list. I'm still so mad we lost that first game to you fuckers. That pissed me off so bad. I'm way too competitive. So me and Noah played Justin and Bobby 2v2. And Terp's clapping over there like an asshole. And they beat us the first game, and we won the second game. So we'll have to play game 3 at some point. But I'm very competitive, and so I was very not thrilled that we fucking lost that game.
By the way, folks, due to time, game 2 was shorter.
All right, now we're throwing now. Yeah, all right.
We'll play make 21 people aware of all the details.
All right. That's all I got though. We can keep the rally short because we're about to go hoop in like 15 minutes here anyway. So, Bobby, thank you for joining. Thank you for replacing Sam. Appreciate y'all for tuning in. Make sure to follow Bobby on Twitter at Bobby Kravitsky. Check out his podcast on the 5 Reasons Sports Network. Is their official name? Is Celtics Breakdown or Celtics Rundown? Apologies.
Celtics Rundown. It started as 5 Reasons Celtics and has pivoted to Celtics Rundown.
Damn right. Go check it out on the 5 Reasons YouTube channel. Follow Bobby on Twitter at Bobby Kravitsky. Follow me on Twitter at JackSimoneNBA. Subscribe to the show. Leave a like, subscribe, and we'll see you next time. Goodbye.
I go.